Hello and welcome to Pan Global Resources Investor Webcast, our first of 2026. With me today are our Chair, Patrick Evans, our President and CEO, Tim Moody, and our Director General for Spain, Juan Garcia Valledor. Very exciting time for us with the maiden mineral resource estimate put out late last year for La Romana and the Cañada Honda deposits. We'll be discussing those today. And we've received a lot of investor questions in advance of this meeting. If we have time, we'll answer all of them in the time allowed. A reminder that participants are muted during the call, but that you can use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to ask questions. Also a reminder that we'll be making some forward-looking statements during this presentation. I would now like to hand over the presentation to our Chair, Patrick Evans.
Hello, everyone. I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to say a few words before the webinar gets underway. First, my congratulations to Tim, Juan, and the whole team in Spain on the very important milestone of the maiden resource statements for La Romana and Cañada Honda at the Escacena Project. These are the very first new discoveries on the prolific Iberian pyrite belt in many years, and we are confident just the first of others to come this year. Within our industry, Tim has one of the most impressive records of economic discoveries. That record continues at Pan Global with the impressive discoveries at Escacena, as well as our new gold discovery at Carmenes on the Rio Narcilla gold belt in northern Spain. I've worked on 6 continents, Antarctica being the only exception, of course, and can frankly say that I've never seen a more favorable operating environment than in southern Spain. The pyrite belt hosts one of the largest districts of supergiant VMS deposits in the world, a vital source of critical minerals. And Escacena, now boosted with the recent addition of the highly prospective Escacena South mineral rights, is one of the very last unexplored parts of the belt. Besides having absolute security of title, Spain has unmatched infrastructure supporting the mining industry, a clear and efficient permitting regime, and highly experienced mining professionals. I don't know a better place to build and operate a mine, and that's why we're investing in Spain. As Tim will tell you, all the operating mines on the pyrite belt are clusters of deposits, and that's what we have at Escacena. Also, Escacena South, our recent addition, hosts one of the most prolific concentrations of gravity targets in the region. All the discoveries on the belt have been made drilling gravity targets, so we should expect further discoveries at the greater Escacena this year. Our maiden resources are a solid start, but just a start. Our vision of plus 100 million tons of copper-rich ore seems very achievable. Of great importance from an asset value perspective, our discoveries are near surface, now including conceptual open pits at La Romana. And La Romana has far and away the most favorable metallurgy on the pyrite belt. Pre-feasibility level metallurgical studies confirm that we can achieve copper recoveries of up to 88% at coarse grind sizes and concentrate grades of up to 32%, which is way and above the operating mines on the belt. In addition, the concentrate has exceptionally low levels of penalty elements, which would support treatment at the Freeport smelter about 50 kilometers away, rather than having to be shipped to China. A word about our gold discovery at Carmenes in northern Spain. These breccia pipes host past-producing copper, cobalt, nickel mines, but with significant underground potential beyond the historic mine workings. We applied for the Carmenes mineral rights to expand the known base metal deposits to depth, which, as we know from the Tsumeb breccia mine in Namibia, can be very prospective. The Spanish state mining company awarded us the Carmenes mineral rights based on, in very large part, on the excellent reputation of our Spanish operating team. As we commenced our field programs at Carmenes, we were surprised to discover exceptionally high gold in soil grades at the Providencia breccia, Subsequent drilling has confirmed wide zones of near-surface, high-grade gold mineralization, which is very exciting. Again, on behalf of the Pan Global shareholders, I congratulate Tim, Juan, and the whole Spanish team on the excellent work at Carmenes, with more exciting results to come. Jason, thanks for this time. I will now hand over to Tim and Juan to discuss the maiden Escacena resources. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Patrick. So I think we just skip through to the next slide. Thanks, Jason. I should just firstly mention that with the maiden mineral resource, it is a resource, not a reserve, and that's an important distinction. This flags a level of study, and you shouldn't. It's not demonstrating a viable project or anything like that. We can't use that yet. We need to advance the studies before we can say what the ultimate pit or mine might look like. So that's an important distinction, an important fact. But look, having a lot of measured material, which is the highest confidence of resource, certainly gives us a good reason to believe that it'll be an easier process to convert that to reserve, where you can have a much more robust economic analysis. Okay, next. All right, so first, just a few sort of summary comments to follow on from what Patrick said. And really the maiden mineral resource is focused on the La Romana deposit, which was our first discovery. In fact, it was our result of our first drill holes in the Escacena Project area. So it is very pleasing that we've taken it from a grassroots discovery to its first resource. But more importantly, it's a large deposit in the context of VMS deposits globally, which typically average about 8 to 12 million tonnes. But it's a very high confidence resource, as I said, given that it's mostly in the measured category. And what's very exciting, what's really, I think, attracted a lot of investors is the upside here, the exploration potential. And we're at the centre of what I hope will be a multi-discovery district. And really the Cañada Honda resource is just a further evidence of the potential in the area for a multi-deposit camp. So some of the features here, well, it is, as Patrick said, it's one of the best areas to be exploring and mining, in my view. Particularly where we're located, I think we have the best position of any of the juniors in the region. We're surrounded by producers. We've got excellent infrastructure at our doorstep. This is as good as it gets when it comes to permitting and support for what we're trying to do from the administration in the area. The La Romana mineralisation, it's highly continuous, and it's with the mineral resource estimate, we've demonstrated very clear potential for a very simple open pit operation with that could produce high quality concentrates with very low penalty component to it. And as I say, high proportion of measured resource that would normally, because it's the highest confidence level in the resource categories, that should normally attract a higher valuation relative to peers who might have lower confidence resources, in the inferred category. Secondly, I guess from the in-pit calculations we've done, it's showing that the grades are higher in the in-pit, which gives us reason to believe that we'll be mining higher grades in the early years, and that's supported by some of the drill sections and cross sections and drilling we've done as well, which shows some of the highest grades and thicknesses of mineralisation very close to surface. So that's what we'd be mining in the very first years of this project, and that is a huge advantage because it gives us the opportunity to accelerate the payback of the deposit. So, and the byproduct credits from tin and silver can then help sustain and cover things like the operating costs going forward. Important to mention, because this La Romana is mainly copper, but secondly tin, both of which on the critical materials, that attracts strong government support. It gives us the opportunity to apply for this to become a strategic project, which helps with accelerating the project through the permitting process. Look, there are many favourable attributes that make Escacena unique, and I'll cover some of those as we go through the presentation. And as I mentioned, it's not just La Romana, but it's the very strong portfolio of exploration targets that we have surrounding this that gives us the confidence that with some exploration success with the drill bit, we could very quickly add to this resource base in the Escacena Project area. Okay, next slide, Jason. Just a reminder of the location. We're La Romana at the centre of the bullseye there. We're within 50 kilometres of most of the operating mines in this famous mineral belt that Patrick referred to, the Iberian Pyrite Belt. We're right next door to Grupo Mexio, or Minera Los Frailes, who are permitted now to build the new underground development at Los Frailes. We're 15 or so kilometres west of Las Cruces, which has recently been acquired by the RCF company from First Quantum. That is fully permitted to go underground. And then the next nearest operating mine is run by Atalaya, which is about 25 or so kilometres further to the west of us. So great location, all of this is connected by great infrastructure. And then it's the Freeport or Atlantic Copper Smelter at Huelva, just 70 kilometres down the road, which is, again, a huge advantage for us. Next. This is a slide we've had in our corporate presentation for, a year and a half, maybe 2 years now, really trying to make it clear what our objective is in the Iberian Pyrite Belt. You know, as Patrick said, all of the big deposits, all the big operating mines in the belt are made of not single ore bodies, but clusters of deposits. In other words, not just a La Romana, but a La Romana plus about 2 or 3 or 4, sometimes up to 7 or 8 different ore bodies that feed a common processing plant. And that's really our goal. La Romana on its own is a very good sized deposit. So it is a very strong start to this project, but our goal remains to continue the exploration to try and reach that target. And I think with the exploration portfolio we have a very good chance of doing that. But we've definitely moved from what we thought initially about it. We were guiding people at sort of 15 to 20, maybe 25 million tonnes as our initial resource. Well, we've come out with a much better outcome than that. We've got 36 million tonnes or thereabout, combination of measured, indicated and inferred. So a very strong start. There's over 350 million pounds of copper equivalent in the mineral resource as it stands at the moment. So we're moving closer to that next step on this chart, which takes us to 50 million tonnes, and then once we get to 100 million tonnes, we're at the scale that's comparable to some of the other bigger producers in the area. Okay, some of the attributes of La Romana. Firstly, the operational simplicity, a very simple geometry. You know, it is a very simple ore body. It's a very predictable, constant dip all the way across the 1.7 kilometres of strike length, highly predictable. So that gives us the opportunity for a single, very simple pit. And when I talk about simplicity, I'm talking about the economic advantage that brings. And then not only a simple pit, but we have a very simple processing flow sheet to deliver best-in-class concentrates for the region. So again, huge advantage. A simple processing flow sheet translates to a lower cost processing plant, etc. So real benefits. And producing clean concentrate, which is a huge advantage over any of the other producing mines in the area. Low risk. As Patrick said, one of the best areas to be exploring and developing a new mine in Andalusia. Very stable jurisdiction, very predictable permitting environment, And the government has set up a unit to help fast track the permitting, particularly if you've got projects classified as strategic. The infrastructure is excellent. The access to the smelter is a very important point. The smelter at Huelva is one of Europe's biggest copper smelters, 75 kilometres away. So that's a significant logistical advantage, and particularly so for Pan Global, being able to produce clean concentrates that could be accepted by that smelter, whereas other concentrates which have more contaminants, poorer quality, will get loaded on a ship at Huelva and have to go to China or elsewhere for processing. So this is an advantage that we have. We can produce concentrates potentially in Europe and without the need to transport it around the world. Lots of economic advantages given the situation of the deposit. It's a very low-cost mining environment, and that allows for very low mining costs. And as I said, a very simple processing flow sheet, so the processing costs are low relative to many other copper projects. The clean concentrates gives us other advantages, strategic advantages. So it gives us the possibility of potentially blending the concentrate with other producers' concentrates to lower their penalty content, for example. So that means opens up the possibility of perhaps having the ore treated at one of the other operating mines in the area, and that would lower the capital intensity for us if we don't have to build a plant, we don't have to build a tailings dam, etc. What else? I mentioned the critical materials aspect to this as well. So next, Jason. So the La Romana pit, it's being done at 0.2% copper cutoff. All of the other assumptions are included in the news release that we announced at the end of 2025. But as you can see the figures here, I don't need to repeat them all. But of note is the 26 million tonnes of measured material. So, and over 32 million tonnes at about a 0.44% copper in the measured and indicated category. So very high proportion of measured and indicated resource. That, as I say, that was done at a 0.2% cutoff. I've shown here for illustration a cutoff grade sensitivity. And you'll see that this has importance as we go forward in this presentation. But very small changes to whether it be price, but also cutoff grade can very quickly add to the size and scale of this project. So typical cutoffs in the area in Spain for open pits are about 0.15% copper. So you move this La Romana to a 0.15% cutoff, and you very quickly add, another over 20% of more tonnes to the resource. So that gives us something to go for. What else? The copper, obviously, with copper forecast to go much higher by sort of 2030, 2035, that also is very favourable for us because the potential development timeline here is quite short. Perhaps by 2030 or thereabouts. So that with those higher prices, that can also help lower the cutoffs and give us access to much more mineralisation for an eventual open pit mine. Okay, next. Also, in the mineral resource news release, we mentioned an in-pit resource. Now, we've had a few questions about this, but not everyone sort of understands what this is and why there should be a big delta between the overall resource and what's in the in-pit. So firstly, this is the in-pit resource at this stage of the project is just a demonstration of what they call reasonable possibility of eventual economic extraction. This is not designed to be the ultimate pit. We fully expect as this project advances and we finesse the optimization, etc., that this pit will eventually grow, and that's quite normal. So But at this stage, just for this, let's say, starter pit, it looks like a pretty robust deposit at 0.5% copper equivalent grade using that 0.2% cutoff. So you drop that to 0.15 and this grows pretty quickly. So it's at this stage, it represents, the in-pit resource represents about 44% of the overall. So that gives us a lot of scope for scaling this project up. So that will be the goal over the next 12 months or so, is to start work on looking and finessing the optimization to capture more of that overall resource. So, we've certainly got plenty of scope here to grow this. We also ran an exercise where we looked at what the first sort of 2 or 3 years of mining might look like, what a pit shell might look like. And that gives an even higher grade starter operation. So where we're accessing some of the highest grades very early in the mine life. So that helps us accelerate the payback. And that's very important for those who understand the economics of these things. To pay back your capital very quickly is a huge advantage. So we're very fortunate with the grade distribution at La Romana in that respect. All right. So, next. Just a very quick, simple plan view. We're working on some better images of the deposit, but it's, as I say, just a plan view of what the in-pit resource looks like. It's about the pit dimensions, roughly 1.7 kilometres east-west, about 350 metres north-south, goes to a maximum depth of about 170 metres. We have drilled this deposit down to about 400 metres. A lot of it is only drilled to about 200 metres depth, but within this pit we capture a lot of high-grade material close to surface. So, right, next. A couple of cross sections. This is an old slide. We haven't updated the copper equivalents here for to use the copper values that we've used in the mineral resource estimate. But look, it's just to indicate that with the figure on the right, the sort of flat topography and the very simple geometry of the mineralisation, in this instance, somewhere in about the centre of the deposit, over 50 metres thick. But importantly, with the higher grades close to surface, within 100 metres of surface. So you're looking at 26 metres of over 1%, 7 metres of over 2% copper, with about 70 or 80 metres below surface. So, that's what we'll be mining very early in this project, and you can see from those intercepts we have grades well above the overall resource grade to access early on. This cross section on the left is one of the section on the far west of the deposit where we have less drilling at this stage, and where the resource remains open and where we could potentially expand the pit. So again, what you can see is that same simple geometry, but with grades well above the overall resource grade. So that's something that we'll look at doing, is expanding the resource and with further drilling with step out drilling to the west. Okay, I might hand us over to Juan to cover the next 3 or 4 slides.
Okay, thank you very much, Tim. Good afternoon to everyone. So the grades we are dealing with in the La Romana deposit, as you will see, are quite typical of the Iberian Pyrite Belt. So we have compared with different operations, open pit operations, and the typical grades to be mined are from 0.3 to 0.5% of copper, and using cutoffs which are at this moment under 0.20%. So, we are sitting now with our resource in 0.37% copper, which is bigger in terms of copper equivalents, as you can see. And inside the pit, the recoverable resource will go up to 0.39% copper and 0.50 in terms of copper equivalent. These grades, if we compare, for example, with Atalaya, with Cerro Colorado, biggest operation in the Spanish part of the Iberian Pyrite Belt, they are mining 0.37% copper, which is more or less the same, with a low cutoff of 0.16. We have used 0.20 for our estimation, so we have a room for improvement in terms of giving more resources with an economic cutoff. The plan mined by Atalaya in Touro in Galicia, in the north of Spain, is planning 38% copper with a cutoff of 0.15, so quite similar. And if we compare to our closest operation with Los Frailes, they were mining in the past, in the open pits, 0.34% copper. So quite in the same range, as you can see. Jason, please, if you move to the next. This is one of our strengths, which is the metallurgical recovery. We have done, as you know, from other presentations, a really detailed metallurgical study for La Romana. And the recoveries we are getting from our estimated process for copper, especially, are really, as you can see in this graph, in the top of other operations in the Pirate Belt. So we are getting recoveries of up to 88% and grades of over 32%. We have used a slightly different, slightly minor numbers for the estimation to be consistent with all the different variations of the study, metallurgical study, but we have used 86 and 26 more or less in terms of recovery and grade. And as you can see in the graph, La Romana sits in the best part of the Pirate Belt in terms of clean, recoverable, high-grade concentrates of copper. If we talk about tin, it will also recover extremely well, over 60% recovery, which is an extremely good number, and giving also concentrates which are beautiful high value of over 60% of tin, which is really also in the top of this type of operations. We also get silver content, which is payable, especially now that the price of silver is boosting up. We are getting something like 3% of the money coming from the deposit would come from silver, which is quite a nice bonus. The process will be absolutely simple: flotation recovery for copper and gravity recovery for tin, with no other major problems foreseen. There are no contaminants at all, almost in the concentrate, so payability is going to be really high. And in terms of process cost, the grinding size for this deposit is coarser than most of the deposits in the Pirate Belt, also because of the geology of the deposit. And finally, we are expecting a quite contained processing cost for the operation. Everything is adding to the things that Tim has said about the size of the pit, the disposition of the ore, etc., helping to get a quite competitive project. Jason, please. So the references we have used for the mineral resource estimation in terms of metal prices were a bit, there were lots of discussions about those because as prices are rising up so quickly, we had to find a number which was reasonable for the estimation and comparable to other operations. If we see this graph, we are comparing other projects that have been presented in the second half of 2025, projects of copper, mainly in Canada, Australia, but also in Africa, also in South America, so covering more or less every part of the world. And as you can see here, we are more or less in the mid-range of the prices used by the different deposits. We used for copper $4.8 per pound, which is now almost around 5.90 it was on last Friday. So we have a real improvement feel there with the price of metals. But also, if we consider tin, the price of tin today is 30% over this reference of $35,000 per ton. The price of silver is more than 40% over this $45 per ounce. So finally, the economics of the project are going to be much better than what has been used for the calculation of this resource. Next, please. And well, we have done an exercise comparing La Romana, the estimation we have done, with another project, Murray Brook, which is done in Canada. It's also copper with other metals, but trying to compare the different parameters coming out of the study. So the utilization rate, so the number of resources which are reasonably recoverable in our model is 44%. We have room to recover much more there. Murray Brook is considering 73%. The strip ratio of the pit would be much smaller. We are estimating under 3, as you can see there, 2.8 as a strip ratio for the pit, which is also giving a very good economic outcome. The concentrate grades are going to be, as I showed you, really in the highest part of the range, which is also giving a lot of benefits in terms of less improved processing costs, less transport costs, etc., which is also giving an additional profit. The recoveries of metal are going to be very high, almost close to 90%, which really give less losses and also more money to the project. The costs of both mining and processing costs are really contained compared with other jurisdictions, with Australia or with America. And finally, what we arrive is that having an in-pit copper content of 183 million pounds in Murray Brook versus 121 in our case, we are recovering the same amount of copper. So that's showing the good potential of La Romana in terms of high recoveries, high economic value, and low costs. Next one, please. So, well, I'm handing back the presentation to Tim to continue to the end.
Yeah, thanks, Juan. And I guess just to follow on from that the last slide, we've done a similar thing looking at some of the projects in the Iberian Pirate Belt. And when you take into account the impact of the much higher recoveries that we can get at La Romana and the concentrate grades, etc., it really means that when you mine and recover, produce a concentrate as well, that the value of the concentrate that we produce is higher, but also the conversion of what you mine to actual copper concentrate is also much higher than the other deposits in the area. So, all right. So Cañada Honda, as I said, it's another deposit to the north of about 3.5-4 kilometers north of La Romana. Again, we haven't done much work there. We've done 16 drill holes. There's a channel sample result that we put out recently. So the drilling is very wide spaced at this point. So it really is just an indication that we have another project, another mineralized system up in the north. The drilling is too far apart at the moment to include all of the mineralization that is encompassed by the drilling so far. And I expect that with closer space drilling, the grades would go up fairly quickly because we have a number of drill intercepts that are significantly above what's shown in the resource as it stands. So very early days on this, but the big attraction here is that we have both near surface open pit potential, but also a very large target that could be more of an underground exploration opportunity associated with this sort of 3 kilometer long gravity and electromagnetic anomaly. So, at a 3 kilometer target, that's equivalent to, say, the Sotiel and Magoyas mine in the same area with which is over 100 million tonnes. So, Cañada Honda at this stage, it's very early days, a very exciting target. It's a very big target, but a lot of the potential is at depths, at much greater depths than we've been drilling, say, at La Romana. So, which is why we haven't advanced it further at this point. But there's a lot of potential to be gained here. Right. Next, Jason. Okay, so coming back to our original target here is to try and find multiple deposits, and La Romana is just the start of the story. That's where we've got our first, let's say, our core foundation for this 100 million tonne objective. But I think we have, with the target portfolio, the opportunities here to really add significantly to the overall resource with some exploration success. And really that really forms the basis of much of our exploration, certainly this year and probably the following year as well, where we look to test more of these geophysics anomalies that look just like La Romana. And we just more than doubled the land area, particularly with the addition of the Escacena South, which contains numerous untested geophysics targets that were identified from the same data set that we used to identify La Romana. So, in addition to exploration and exploration drilling to find new resources, make new discoveries, we'll look to this year to expand La Romana, expand Cañada Honda. We'll also look at advancing some of the technical studies where we try and improve the cost estimates and the assumptions to, particularly with La Romana, bring in more material and expand the overall resource, open pit resource. We also look to fly the Escacena South area with the helicopter electromagnetic survey to help prioritise targets so that we can advance those for drilling as well. So, yeah, it's a pretty exciting year ahead for Escacena. And in addition, we'll be looking to advance our Carmenes project that Patrick referred to at the beginning, up in northern Spain, where we've made a new gold discovery. And it's just, again, very fortunate. The very first target we've drilled in this new area has resulted in the discovery of a new gold deposit. So very early days on that. We're still trying to understand the geometry of it. But if there's one, there's almost certainly going to be more gold deposits to be found in the area. So watch this space. I think we've got two very exciting projects to go forward with in 2026. Right, next, Jason. Okay, so I thought I'd just add this picture because this just shows the mineralite situation, the sort of brownish coloured areas in the middle here are Pan Global's mineralites. The blue outlines are the areas we've added this year, in 2025. And so we've got a lot of new areas to go and explore. But the other reason for showing this picture is to show our land position relative to some of the other producers in the area. So when I say we're surrounded by other producers, the pinkish colour there is Atalaya. The red is Grupo Mexico or Mineral Australis. The blue is Cobre Las Cruces, which now is Panduro, which was a company created by RCF. And the green is Sandfire, which are the other big producers in the area. So you can see our land position. We have a significant land position surrounded by producers, and I think that really gives us a significant advantage. I should say that we were also competing with a couple of producers for the area that we call Escacena South. So, yeah, a great location. Right. Next, Jason. Over to you, Jason.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, just looking at our split for shareholder base, I mean, we've been very pleased with how this has developed in the last couple of years. We've gotten a lot more diversity geographically, particularly adding a lot of support for the company in Europe, out of Germany, Switzerland, and the UK. So that's something that we've had as a goal for the company, and we're doing quite well in that area. Institutional holders have pretty well doubled. I think as you know, they can see the projection of the fact that we're going to get to a mineral resource estimate as an initial starting point. There's a lot of institutions that are looking at an MRE as sort of a baseline before they start to invest. So we think this is going to open up a lot of opportunity for additional investment in the company. We've had great support from Conwave, the Commodity Discovery Fund, Merck, RBC, Sprott have all been there for a while now. So looking forward to increasing that support now that we've got the MRE out. Also to note too is that with the analyst coverage, we've got SCP has got a target price on us of 80 cents per share. As all of our shareholders know, we've been trading quite low in sort of the 15-cent range for a while. So looking forward to now being able to get out there and start to realize some of that target price. Hanneman Partners as well as got a target at 40 cents. So as Tim mentioned, with the gold discovery in the north and then the addition of Escacena South, we think that there's a better opportunity than ever to invest in Pan Global.
Okay.
So with that, I guess we'll go to our questions that we got in advance. And there were a lot of questions. So if we aren't able to answer your question today, for sure, we will be getting back to anyone who sent in anything. And of course, always we're open to setting up calls. If you have a long list of questions you want answered, we're happy to do that. So first one is talking about the delta that we had between the in-pit resource and the full MRE at La Romana. As part of that question, I mean, I think Tim, you answered it during the presentation, but the second part of this question is what is unclear to me is what is the status of the 21 million tons that is not thought to be economic, and why is this the case? Is it adjacent to the pit, but without the continuity for it to be included, or is it something else?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing, the word economic is something you really start to more assign once you have a reserve, not a resource. So, as the resource says, it should not be used to indicate viability at this stage. There's a lot more work to be done. So, that's the reason. The in-pit resource at this stage is just, as I say, a demonstration. It's a start, an indication of what is possible. It's not by any means meant to be the ultimate pit. As we've tried to explain, there's a big opportunity there with a much bigger mineral resource than we can see, and that's included in the pit at this stage. But that indicates the scalability of this. And as we showed that with small changes to the copper price or to the cutoff, we can very quickly start to add to the overall resource. And look, we fully expect that as we start to finesse some of the economic assumptions that sit behind that mineral resource, that we'll be able to find further value here, further opportunity to expand the overall pit. And as I say, the mineral resources, both the in-pit resource and the overall resource, are still not closed off. They're still open for expansion. So hopefully that answers that.
Right. And I guess this speaking again to the La Romana resource, the majority of the resource was in the measured category. How are shareholders better off today with the company having used funds to do infill drilling at La Romana to produce a resource with such a high percentage in the measured category? Wouldn't these funds have been better used trying to find a new discovery?
Yeah, a great question. Firstly, we didn't really do an infill program at La Romana. This has been systematic step-out drilling, and it's continued to expand. And that's what's, I guess, been a pleasing surprise, that it just keeps going. It just keeps growing. And as we said, it's still not closed off at this stage. But we've not sort of started with a broad drill spacing and then infilled it. That's not what we've done at all. This has been progressive step-outs at a drill spacing that is generally appropriate for inferred resource in the Iberian Pirate Belt, namely about a 50 metre by 50 metre drill pattern. We did start with sort of 100 by 50 or thereabouts, but 50 by 50 is generally adequate for inferred. So it's just that when we've done the calculations And because of the high continuity of the mineralization, it's been able to classify as measured rather than inferred. So that's down to the geology rather than an infill program. There's only been a couple of very minor instances where we've actually done some infill, and that was a couple of years ago when we targeted some specific geophysics features where we thought that the drill pattern had straddled some strong geophysics features. So we thought, well, let's go and test those, and we did. And what it did was we hit higher grade mineralization than all the surrounding holes. So that was a very interesting outcome. We also have done some analysis that at a wider, when we drill to that 50-meter spacing versus say 100 or 200-meter spacing, the grade goes up without necessarily changing the volume very much. So there is another case for drilling at the 50 by 50 meter pattern or 50 by 25 meter pattern versus say a much wider drill spacing. So I should also add that because this is mostly in the measured category, and because it's this result has been particularly pleasing, it means that we're actually potentially saving a lot of money because we don't have to go and do a whole lot of infill drilling to convert, say, inferred to measured or to measured and indicated. We're already there. So then the conversion also from measured to reserve is also going to be much easier, and again a further saving in terms of future expense in converting resource to reserve. Sorry, Juan, did you have anything to add to that? Is that summarise that?
No, I think everything is clear with your explanation.
And I guess, Tim, that is sort of related to that, sticking with La Romana, how will Pan Global continue to develop the La Romana resource to access the rest of the defined resource and increase it through categories through drilling down dip and along strike?
Yeah, well, look, the most value at La Romana is really from the near surface mineralization. So that's really the focus, I think, for any expansion drilling we do, is to look at whether we can expand the near surface mineralization to add to the overall in-pit resource. So rather than try to extend the depth extent, I would rather focus the exploration dollars on the near surface shallow drilling to add to the resource. That has the greatest economic impact at this stage.
And I guess this one, and you did talk about this a little bit, and obviously we had the comparable there from Canadian Copper, but is it possible to better outline how the La Romana MRE directly compares to deposits in close proximity, and is there excess milling capacity in the region? Would anyone be willing to accept feed from a truck and shovel operation? How difficult would it be to permit a truck and shovel operation?
Yes, well, obviously a couple of questions in that. Well, obviously we've seen with our comparisons that we're within the grade range of other open pits in the area, which are using lower cutoffs, so that gives us opportunity to eventually lower our cutoffs as we advance our studies. So I think we are directly comparable. I guess, say compared to Cerro Colorado, the Azaleas open pit, they don't have the tin and the silver, for example, and their concentrate grades are currently about 16 or 18% versus what we're could potentially produce, which is sort of 26 to 32% range. So quite different in terms of economic prospects for us compared to, say, Cerro Colorado. And similarly with the Minera Los Frailes right next door to us. Now that's going to be an underground mine development, but the grades are, again, from what we understand, are similar to what they were in the previous open pit resource, 0.34 or thereabouts, probably looking to target some slightly higher grade zones where they can, but that's currently what we think they're looking at. So the copper, it's very interesting geologically. At Los Frailes, the copper is quite often displaced from the lead and zinc, so which means they have to go after that lower grade material. Another thing we've seen from their published study was the concentrate grades and recoveries. The indications are that it's a very complex ore requiring it's difficult processing, producing sort of a much lower grade concentrate and with much lower recoveries. I think one can correct me, but below 50% recovery of the copper through
that's right.
processing. So, when you compare recovering 50% of the copper you mine versus 90% of nearly 90%, which is what we're looking at with La Romana, we have very different quality ore. But I think more importantly is the deleterious metal content. With all of the other operating mines having higher processing costs, mainly around because they're dealing with deleterious metal content. This opens up an opportunity for us that the extra value of having our copper ore as potential blend to reduce the deleterious metal content and make the concentrates from the other mines more saleable, is a huge benefit for us. And look, Grupo Mexico right next door to us, they're more of a copper producer than they are a lead zinc mine. So I would think that having another source of copper on their doorstep must have some appeal to them, and similarly for other producers in the area. So, but look, having that very clean concentrate's a very huge strategic advantage for us, and all the better that we are surrounded by producers where we're not necessarily going to be held to ransom to one or the other.
Yeah, and I guess, and sort of on that last question there, maybe Juan, you can speak to how difficult would it be to permit a truck and shovel operation in Spain from your 4 decades of experience?
Well, in reality, it should be easier to permit than a complete mining operation with a processing plant. The truck and shovel with a simple process that shouldn't bear maybe a tailings processing facility or whatever, it should be much easier, much quicker to permit than a complete processing plant. And we are seeing that permitting in the area is fast, fortunately, and the administration is helping a lot in that sense. But a simpler operation should be simpler to permit.
Great.
And lower cost. If it's just a truck and shovel operation, a quarry, then you're not building a plant or a tailings facility. It's much smaller footprint, but you save a lot of costs. So there's certainly benefits to having the ore process somewhere else, particularly on the permitting timetable as well.
Well, I guess sort of to close out a little bit of what on the La Romana specific questions that we had in advance. When would you expect to initiate a preliminary feasibility study for La Romana, assuming continued drilling success? Would the decision to launch a PFS be explicitly signaled to the market as a milestone?
I think when you announce a PFS, then there's an expectation you're going to deliver it. So. No, I do think that is an important milestone when we do announce that. But look, we haven't made that decision at this point. I think there's a lot of other work we'd like to get done. I think with the abundance of very strong-looking exploration targets in the area, for me, that's a much stronger objective, is to start to drill some of these other targets, identify them and drill them, and hopefully make additional discoveries. That has the potential to have a much greater economic impact. And help with the value creation for investors as well. Look, I think there's certainly what we'd like to do is have also, whilst we're doing that exploration work, is to continue to advance La Romana, advance the economic and other technical studies to ahead of commencing a pre-feasibility study. That other work can help us assess the other options that we might have, whether it be processing or etc. There's a lot of other work we can do that we'd like to do before we commit to doing a pre-feasibility study. But look, once we do it, I think it could go very, very quickly, given the work that we've done so far and the work we're planning to do.
So now turning towards Cañada Honda specific questions. The first question I've got is a short one, and then there's a longer one later on. But what is the significance of including a resource estimate for Cañada Honda?
Yeah, look, we did the work, and it showed that there was a body of mineralisation. There was other mineralisation that was drilled as well, but the drill spacing was too wide for that to be classified as resource at this stage. So, given the work was done, we thought that, well, there's little harm in actually posting it at this point. But it is very early stage. But I guess the main thing is it just indicates that there is a second mineralised system. We can see the opportunity to improve the grade, expand the resource pretty quickly and substantially at Cañada Honda. And I think the other thing is that it shows this. It's a bit different in the sense that it's a gold dominant system, whereas La Romana doesn't have any gold. So this just adds another dimension to what we're pursuing in our Escacena project.
Second part of the question was, how would you envisage the deposit being developed and mined in practice? For example, an open pit component transitioning to underground, and what would that imply for the potential scale and role of Cañada Honda within the broader Escacena project?
Yeah. Well, it's obviously early days, but I think the indications are, and I would say it's the exploration target here is for both a shallow open pit resource, and we can see some evidence of that potential, particularly from the channel sampling we did in one of the old tunnels right close to surface, where we had 26 meters of over gram gold from surface. So yeah, that indicates some shallow open pit potential. But I think the vast majority of the Cañada Honda target is much deeper, and so an eventual mine might be transitioning to an underground development. But it's a bit too early for that. But as I say, the majority of the target is probably more likely to be an underground mine development, but well within the depth range of some of the other mines in the area.
And I guess the next question on that one was, do you see it having the potential to reach a similar size to La Romana or larger?
Yeah, there was another part to that previous question, is what does it do for La Romana? Well, look, it's another mineral system. There is copper at Cañada Honda as well. I think the copper didn't shine through in the initial sort of inferred resource that we've got, but we do have a number of intersections of potential mineable widths and over % copper. So there is meaningful copper there. There is silver as well. So this could potentially feed a common processing plant. And we should say that the mineral resource estimate work is done at this stage has been done on the basis of standalone projects, not something that would be potentially processed elsewhere. So with the idea being that we're trying to find a cluster of deposits that would feed a common processing plant, Cañada Honda could very well fit into that concept very neatly. Juan, did you have anything to add to that?
No.
So looking at, although obviously we're really focused in this webinar on the maiden mineral resources that we've put out for the two deposits, there's some more general kind of questions about how we want to develop the Escacena project, as well as targets for where the company is going in the next year or two. So one of the questions was, when you refer to the 100 million ton target for Escacena, is that intended to be predominantly measured and indicated, or does that figure include a meaningful inferred component? How should investors think about the quality mix you're ultimately targeting at that scale?
Yeah, so the chart that we showed with the 25, 50 and 100 million ton target is a combination of resource and reserve. So we're trying to find comparable quality material, obviously ultimately with economic potential to be of a scale comparable to those bigger projects. So I don't know how better to answer that question.
Okay. Moving on to the next one. Based on what you know today about geometry, metallurgy, and permitting in Andalusia, do you believe this first production around 2030 is a realistic planning assumption? What are the key critical path items that most influence that timeline?
Yeah. Well, the first is the decision to apply for a mining license, and we haven't decided to do that yet. So, but if we do that and we get the deposit classified as strategic, and given that it's mostly copper, which is obviously chief amongst the strategic materials, then that opens the opportunity for the permitting to be fast tracked. And the government created what they call an accelerator unit to try and help with that fast tracking of permits for projects that are deemed strategic. So I think it was 27 months from application to granting of the mining permit. Reality is that has been tested already. Atalaya's Masa de Valverde deposit was permitted in under 2 years, I think closer to 18 months. So we expect that this could be fast tracked and it could be under the 27 months, so a 2-year timeline for permitting. Even faster if you're not building a plant, you're not building a tailings facility. It's just, as we talked about before, a truck and shovel operation. So look, I think it is realistic, a 2030 timeline, but we'll start the market from when we apply for the mining license. Then we could be looking at sort of first production 4 years after that, allowing for a couple of years to get the permits in place, and then a couple of years for the development to start production. Juan, you've got experience in that. Do you want to add to that comment?
Well, more than experience is the experience of what we see around, and we see that some operations have been permitted in this 2-year period. So we know that we are there. If the project is not too complex in terms of environmental issues, etc., which it doesn't seem to have, it could fit perfectly into that timing. And the administration, as you say, is doing a lot of things to help fast tracking and reducing administration times and everything. So, well, we are in a good moment for this, I think.
Great. And looking a little bit back on 2025, obviously we embarked on an ambitious program for testing different targets at Escacena in particular. The question that an investor had was, when do you expect drill results to be issued for Bravo and the other targets that were drilled last year?
Yeah, so we still have some results to come in and to report. I expect we'll probably put out a general update at some point, which can summarize some of those results. But be sure that if we've got any material results, we will report them. So, we've had some exploration success, we've hit mineralization, we hit some alteration and so on. But if we make a new discovery, we'll be out there telling you very quickly. But so we do have some more results to report. We are still waiting, I think, for some results from the Carmenes project up in the north as well.
And I guess maybe a way to end it here is looking forward into 2026. If you were to rank the top potential drill targets for 2026 based on what you know now, what would they be?
Yeah, well, I guess the easy ones are the expansion drilling of La Romana and Cañada Honda. But we have some drill-ready targets at El Pozo, Cortico, and I expect that the Trinidad and Carmenes targets will also be advanced pretty quickly. We can see the mineralization at surface. So there's 3 straight away. The El Pozo target is one that we'd like to drill very soon. It looks, for all intents and purposes, a replica of Cañada Honda in some respects. Polymetallic, copper, lead, zinc, gold, silver, with an old mine working and a big geophysics feature next to it. And that's been supported by some of the ground geophysics we've been doing, some also surface geochemistry, etc. So that is drill ready, and it's probably one of the first things that we'll be drilling this year.
And obviously, we talked about the excitement around getting the Escacena South property awarded. The investor asks, Escacena South looks promising, but how long will it take to complete all surveys and build the most promising targets? How long will it take to permit drill holes? And are there any crops or farms in the area which will delay drilling?
Yeah, so I guess in a lot of the area is covered by the sort of the flat areas with sunflowers and wheat during the summer and so on. The wet period tends to be sort of late in the year, beginning early in the year, sort of around now. Through the summer period, you've got the crops, and harvesting is the only thing that can get in the way. But we can often work around that. So most of the year we'll be able to access the Escacena South area. But as we always do, is we try to work with the farmers so that we don't unnecessarily impact the harvesting and planting and so on. Wet weather can affect things. Fortunately, it's generally a pretty dry area of Spain, but this last 12 months they've seen more rain than they've seen for years and years. So these things happen. What else? In terms of timing, and for permitting is generally pretty quick. That's not really, in terms of drill permitting, that's not generally an issue. At the moment, we're just waiting for the actual mineral rights to be formally granted so that we can commence groundwork. Although we were awarded the area in the public tender, the actual formal mineral rights have not yet been presented to us. So we're just waiting for those to come through. But I expect we'll be hitting the ground running in certainly the beginning of the second half of this year, and there's a very good chance we could be drilling the Trinidad and Carmen area within 2 or 3 months of getting ground access. In the meantime, as I mentioned, we want to fly the area with a helicopter survey. There is nothing to impede us from doing that. You don't need any other permits to be able to do that. That's going to help us fast track the both target identification, but also target prioritisation within that Escacena South area. And again, that's going to help fast track the overall exploration process so that we know which targets, which of those big gravity anomaly geophysics targets should we go to first with the ground crews so that we can do the work for defining where to drill.
That's great. Well, thanks very much, Tim. I guess we're at the end of our time allowed here, so maybe there's a few comments, Tim and Patrick, you would like to make.
Well, thanks very much, Jason. Thanks for inviting me to participate in the webinar. As Tim and Juan have illustrated, this the maiden resources at La Romana and Cañada Honda are a very solid start, but just a start. And both of those mineralized systems remain open. And I'm particularly excited to get on to Escacena South, where I think we have a very strong possibility of making further discoveries. So my thanks to Tim and the team in Spain, Juan. Keep up the good work, and we look forward to a solid stream of good results this year.
Thanks, Patrick. And I'll just sort of finish. Look, it is a very exciting year for us this year. I mean, that Escacena South area, we had to wait 7 or 8 years for that to become available. When we sat there patiently, saw all the potential, and nothing we could do about it but just wait and be ready to participate and get hold of that area. But it's a very exciting area. I think it's one of the last remaining sort of shallow covered areas that has largely remained untested in the Iberian Pirate Belt. So very good prospects for additional discoveries. So as Patrick said, this is just the start, and we've got a pretty exciting year ahead of us, and I'm very confident we'll be able to have an aggressive drill program this year to test some of those many opportunities we have.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your day.